Hey everybody, today we are going to be talking to healthy little sleepers about breastfeeding and sleep. I'm gonna hop on.
All right, so should we get to
Yeah,
our good questions?
have
Oh my gosh.
a little introduction first.
Yes.
So, hello everybody, I'm Julie. I am a speech pathologist and board certified lactation consultant. And I have a friend here today that I'm her introduce herself to.
My name's Susie. I'm a PhD in applied developmental psychology, and I'm a certified pediatric sleep and child behavior consultant. And my company is Healthy Little Sleepers, and I help families through one-on-one consults and overnights and online group coaching. I have a coaching community called the Healthy Little Village where I host weekly group coaching calls to help with their little one's sleep. So it's my love. And oftentimes there's so many feeding questions when it comes to sleep, which is why I love you and all your channels, because you're so informative and give such really good advice. So I love doing these lives with you.
Yeah, because we got normalize normal on top of giving strategies and compensations. And really, when we normalize normal, that often reduces just as much stress as giving a compensation.
Right. And parents, like, we already feel so much stress. And when people think also about sleep training, they think about like not feeding their baby through the night. And that's not what sleep training is either. So yeah, that's my take on it. Doesn't have to be through the night, right? Like, there still can be a feeding, maybe even two, depending on your baby and all of that jazz. So wonderful Julie to the rescue.
So let me know you had a list of questions for me and go through the questions and let things spontaneously go where they want to go.
Yeah, and if people have questions, they can pop them in the question box too, or the comments. All right. So, first question, will my baby naturally wean if my supply disappears?
So let's break that down into two questions. Okay. First is weaning, and the second is supply. So the way that the breast milk works, you cannot spontaneously stop making milk. That it doesn't happen. It's not biologically how our body is designed to work. Reasons why milk supply go down would be going on a medication like an antihistamine that has a side effect of dropping supply. Getting pregnant again will drop supply. You'll completely shift back to colostrum at the end of the first trimester. Um, Early sleep training where the breast doesn't have the storage capacity to go long amounts of time between feeding in order to maintain supply. So I have seen early sleep training sabotage milk supply because of how milk is maintained. Um, or using a bad quality pump with the wrong size flanges where it's not efficiently stimulating the breast and unidentified tongue tie. So
Mhm.
you cannot spontaneously lose milk supply. You lose milk supply by not moving milk supply. And again, there can be various factors, but it's not just going to spontaneously lose. We know from the research that babies are also not going to typically self-wean until at least 2 years old. So if weans under a year, there's usually something going on. There's an unidentified tongue tie, there's an allergy or intolerance, there's something else happening there that's weans. Because yes, your milk supply is to slowly decrease and wean as your toddler naturally nurses less and less and less. So what's supposed to happen is we're supposed to establish a full milk supply within the first 12 weeks, the first 3 months, and then milk supply is supposed to maintain from about 10 pounds or 6 weeks to a year, where your body doesn't have to make more milk. You should be making 25 to 30 ounces in 24 hours from 1 month, 6 weeks until 1 year. You don't have to make gallons of milk a day. And then as baby starts taking more solid foods after the first birthday, milk supply is supposed to slowly, gradually wean until they wean around 2 years old. That's biologically how our body should work. So yes, if your baby is weaning from the breast, yes, your milk supply should drop because that's how it works. But if that's done too soon, it's often because of mechanical factors, undiagnosed ties, medications, pregnancy, not feeding the baby enough, going back to work and having a poor quality pump that's not efficiently emptying.
So if the supply is disappearing, your baby still might need milk. It doesn't necessarily mean they're weaning. They just need like a supplement. If
Now,
the milk is
milk removals. It's milk removals. There is no or tea or bar or cookie that can replace efficiently moving milk. The biggest time period that I see is when moms go back to work. Anytime between 3 to 6 months, you'll hear different things based on where you're at in the country and maternity leave and all of that. But poor quality pumps with the wrong size pump flanges can sabotage milk supply. We'll often hear it between 3 to 6 months if you got a bad pump where it's not efficiently moving milk, or caregivers are overfeeding the baby while you're at work because they're used to formula feeding babies. Breastfed babies take less milk more often than formula fed babies who tend to do larger bottles less. So you can't just spontaneously drop supply. It happens because you're not efficiently moving milk.
Interesting. I love this. Okay, thank you. Okay, here's our next one. When your baby starts going longer stretches at night, how do you acclimate your breasts?
They should do that on their own. So if you have a baby that's naturally sleeping longer at night, meaning you're not using a snoo on the full feature to try to get them to sleep, you're offering them the breast routinely when they're hungry, what happens is as they sleep longer, the breast will shift because it wants to feed the baby. So if your baby's naturally sleeping longer at night, your milk supply will shift to accommodate the longer stretches of sleep. It usually takes about 4 days of a new sleep routine to see that supply shift. So night 1, 2, 3, you might wake up in a puddle of milk. You might wake up really full, rock hard and gorgeous breasts. But by day 4, 5, 6 of a consistently now sleeping baby, milk supply will shift. Now this is where we come into play of breast storage capacity. If I wake up and the baby is still sleeping, what do I do? This is my most common question that I get overnight. Do I need to pump to maintain supply? And it depends. Every person's body has a different storage capacity, which is how much it can hold in the breast at any given time, and a magic number. And the magic number, thank you, Nancy Moorbacher, for creating that term. The magic number is times in 24 hours the breast needs to be emptied in order to make supply, and then more additional pumpings increases supply, and less feeding and pumping drops supply. So overnight, if the baby is naturally sleeping longer, supply will shift to where baby can then take more at feedings. But if we're asking the baby to sleep through when the baby really needs to be moving more from the breast, because we're bottle feeding, we're formula feeding, that's where we can see supply drop, where maybe pumping would be needed. So it's really dependent on an individual's body and why the baby's sleeping longer. So again, it's like if the baby's naturally sleeping, let the baby sleep. Your body will adjust within about 4 or 5 nights of that new routine. If you're uncomfortable, you can do some lymphatic drainage massage, really gentle massage. You can see my videos on that. You can move just enough milk to feel comfortable, but you don't have to wake up and pump and move that milk. Now, if you're asking the baby to sleep longer, baby's getting bottles during the day, maybe you're doing some formula supplementation and you want to maintain that milk, there is a people that do need to wake up to pump overnight to maintain supply. It's an individual thing based on your magic number.
Yeah. I can vouch for that too, because in the beginning when my daughter naturally started sleeping longer, I did wake up because she was on the younger side and I wanted to maintain my supply. Now there were other things, that stress and stuff, that ruined my supply, which I wish I had you then to like think about what else I need to do. But with my son, he was a feeder. He was a bigger boy, and he fed consistently through like 4 months, and then like I maintained that stuff. Like I had so much milk with him, and I did wake up with her to pump to try and maintain it, but it was also the context of the situation was also very different.
Yeah, which is tricky. It's context, right? Which is why a lot of times you and I are doing private consultations on sleep and breastfeeding so we can figure out, are you back to work? Do you have a good pump when you're gone? Is baby being overfed during the day by a bottle? Is there a medication at play? Is there some other kind of family stress, lifestyle shift? What's going on in your situation to then really be able to say, oh, okay, we actually don't need to pump, supply will shift, you can just feed during the day. Or, hey, you might want to consider getting up and pumping to supply.
Right. Totally. Love it. All right. Here's a good one. When can you start letting preemies sleep 3+ hour stretches and not wake them to eat?
So here's the thing, right? With a full-term healthy baby, we wake them until we know that feeding is going well. So theoretically, with a full-term we may never need to wake if they are feeding well from the beginning. I never woke my baby from newborn. I let them go as long as I wanted because I knew that they were getting milk. Bottle feeding babies where we know they're getting volume, we don't necessarily need to wake if we know they're getting enough milk, feeding well. We wake babies because babies are like, huh, I've been born. I what with my mouth how many times a day? And they think they're still connected to mom's body and they haven't figured out how to feed yet, or we're still establish a milk supply. So the reason we wake breastfeeding babies is to make sure that they're feeding well and not sleeping through feeding cues. So with older full-term babies, if they are feeding well, paying latch, hearing them swallow, make diapers expected, let them sleep as long enough as they want if it's going well. If they're not feeding well, we wake them until they've regained their birth weight and feeding is going well. Similar concept is still in the preemie population, but they have a higher expectation. When they come out, they missed X number of weeks of practice in utero of sucking and swallowing with patient. So if you have how preemie are will make a different answer to that question. If you have a 38-week late preterm baby that's, technically on that border of term, that's a much shorter leash waking up than a 37-week or 36-week or 35 or 30, right? Normally, I typically recommend we want to wait until after about 2 weeks after their due date and breastfeeding is going well, because most preemies, not all, most preemies are doing some kind of triple feeding. Their time at the breast, they're pumping, and they're bottle feeding because they're just not efficient at the breast. If they are efficient feeding, we don't need to wake them up. If they're not efficiently feeding and they're sleepy at the breast, they're sleepy at the bottle, it's forever to get feeding, then those babies need to be woken up until they're efficient. And then once feeding is going well, you can let them sleep.
Right. And it's different about gaining your preterm weight with a preemie because they need to actually just gain weight, correct?
Yeah, we're because again, you think about expectation. A baby that's born at 30 should have had 3 weeks of practice in utero, sucking, swallowing, and developing, whereas a 35-weeker, things come out more under, lungs are a little more undeveloped, they don't have as much fat, they often come out fat pads in the cheeks. So the developmental skills of a 34-weeker than the developmental skills of a 35 or 36 or 37-weeker. The feeding skills are all different. So really complicated. That's why you need healthcare and a private practice lactation consultant if you're discharged from the hospital to help you figure out how are they gaining, how are they feeding, do some pre and post breast checks, how are they feeding on the bottle, longer the going, where's the milk supply, help you make that decision to guide when you can let them sleep.
Yeah, to tag onto that question for you, do you recommend when you have a preemie 34 or 35 weeks and they're not efficient that they need some kind of, therapy, mouthing therapy, tongue, strengthening, swallow strengthening, being an SLP and getting those patterns down?
Depends on the baby. Some babies just time to develop.
Okay.
Babies need positive oral time, nuzzling time. They might need a higher research on nutritive sucking in the preemie population to help them coordinate while on breathe. And sometimes some of them do need a lot more And it really is, there is no cookie cutter answer ever in the feeding world. I've seen my weakers come out and the third baby where mom other babies, they can come out at 30 breastfeed just fine because there's an ample milk supply, not mom's first rodeo. And I've seen 37 weekers come out in weeks to figure out how to efficiently breastfeed. So that's why the whole journey and story really matters.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And then I have this question that was submitted. Baby is eating 5 ounces of breast milk every 3 hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., causing sleep issues. How do you lessen?
So 5 ounces every 3 hours, that's 20 ounces. That's almost the entire day's worth of feed. So that baby should then only be getting a couple ounces during the day, which if the baby's getting equivalent ounces during the day, they're being overfed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We don't even know how old this baby is either.
So it's really, because again, from about 10 pounds or 4 to 6 weeks, depending on birth weight, till a year, milk don't increase. My mouth can be hungry even though my stomach is full. Most breastfed babies do not take 5 ounces of breast. And if they do, they're only getting 5 feedings in 24 hours. So most of the time, something else going on, and we don't have the history. We don't know the rest of the story to know what's going on. If mom's back at work and eating, or if some kind of tongue tie causing reflux. There's a lot of other unknowns in this case. So this would be a case where it's like you really need to work with a private practice lactation consultant to figure out, is baby sleeping through feedings and then making up for them at night? Is mom working and baby's reverse cycling? We don't have enough information to give any answer other than very rare for breastfed babies to do 5-ounce feedings unless they're only doing about 5 feedings a day.
Yeah. I have a question for you to piggyback on that, because I heard you say if a baby is taking 5, it's likely not getting that much at the breast.
Lost your audio.
Okay. Sorry, I had a notification pop up. That's probably why. So you mentioned that if a baby is taking 5 ounces from a bottle, they're probably not getting that much from the breast. And I've heard it was, so this is really great because I've heard it was opposite. Like if they're taking, or no, if the pumping, right? Let's say they pumped 5 ounces, right? They're probably getting more than 5 ounces from you. Is that different?
Yes and no and no and yes, okay. Right? It really depends on unique anatomy, right? But we will typically say most breastfed babies will take 2 to 4 ounces every 2 to 3 hours. Most breastfed babies average 11 feedings in 24 hours. That's from like 0 to 12 months. Most breastfed babies do smaller more frequently because of breast anatomy. There are some cases where they do 4, 5, 6 ounces from the breast, much less often. They're out there, okay, but it tends to be more common that they take less. But on a bottle, get babies to take much bigger volumes. We have human babies with human stomachs. So I have a 32-ounce Nalgene bottle. My capacity is 128 ounces. I can put this whole bottle in my stomach, right? Thanks. Is more than 128 ounces, right? You all eat that whole plate. We all stretch our stomach to capacity, but that's not where it feels comfortable. My stomach feels comfortable at about 10 ounces. I don't like a 12-ounce glass of water. I feel comfortable at 10, but usually I'm drinking somewhere between 6 to 8. Babies have stomachs, so most babies will feel comfortable at 3 or 4 ounces, but we can fill them to 5 or 6 because they have stomach. So it becomes a tricky thing because there is a pairing of breast storage capacity and baby's stomach. So when we talk about feeding, there is all, most, many, some, few, and none, right? So all babies need to be fed. There's no baby that doesn't need fed. Most babies at the breast want to take 2 to 4 ounces every 2 to 3 hours. Many babies can take 3 to 4 ounces, 5 ounces every 3 or 4 hours. Some babies can take 5 to 6 ounces 5 times a day, and few babies can take 6 to 8 ounces 4 times a day at the breast, right? It's a bell curve. So what often, but formula feeding is different, right? We're measuring bottles and we're asking human stomachs to stretch and do bigger volumes less often. Apples to oranges. So what we often try to do is we try to pigeonhole breastfeeding volumes into formula feeding bottles, and it's not equivalent because breast milk changes throughout the day, volumes change throughout the day, fat content changes throughout the day based on all kinds of different factors. So a baby at the breast will typically do a bigger volume first thing in the morning to rehydrate the day, and then do smaller and smaller volumes throughout the day.
Yeah.
It's pumping big pumps in the morning and they get smaller throughout the day. Formula standard. You just give them the same amount every single time. So it's a really tricky conversation of typically, if things are going well, if you have a good quality pump that's efficient with the right size flanges, usually what you pump is what baby wants. So if you're pumping 4 ounces, you can give the baby 4 ounces. Pumping 2 ounces, give the baby 2 ounces. If you pump 6 ounces, give the baby 6 ounces. But we can pump ourselves into oversupply, and you could have a bad pump that's not efficiently emptying. So again, it's the individually in your situation, what's going on, and is it working for you and your body? So that's a long-winded answer to the question, but it
Yeah.
just this complicated of it's not a one size fits all answer.
Yeah, I give you a hard one to answer, but there's no like black and white. It's not black and white, right? Like it's almost like with sleep. How do I get my baby to sleep through the night? If I had a magic wand for it to be a no cry solution, then I'd be a millionaire, right? There's gonna be some upset because you're changing something, but that doesn't mean we leave them alone. Yeah. Okay, here's another one. Why is my 7-month-old only wanting to eat when falling asleep?
Again, that's a tricky one, right? We don't know the rest of the story. Is baby in daycare and being overfed during daycare? Is mom baby all day? What's the rest of the story? Because I've seen where like that's normal. It is normal for babies to fall asleep at the breast. Nurse them to sleep. You cannot spoil a baby. And it's normal for them. Your breast milk releases sleep hormones that help them sleep. So again, it's like, is this societal that they've been taught don't let the baby fall asleep at the breast? Or is this something else going on, right? Like if breastfeeding is going really well, sleep at the breast is normal, and I applaud it.
Mm-hmm.
If breastfeeding is not going well, needing to sleep can often baby never actually really learned to efficiently breastfeed, and they're relying on reflexes to suck and swallow. So let's go back, let's unpack. For the first 3 months, babies are relying on instinct and reflex to suck and swallow. You put something out, they suck on it. You put volume of liquid in there, they have to swallow. As they practice over and over and over for 3 months, they learn how to suck, and then they get to choose what they want to suck on. So suck as a reflex integrates, meaning it goes into the brain stem so that they swallow when they're reflexively to swallow secretions. You and I don't wake up in a puddle of drool because swallowing is volitional. I can choose to suck and swallow, but it's also reflexive. You and I are swallowing saliva without thinking about it while we're and we swallow overnight so that we don't wake up in a pile of drool. If a baby never learned how to efficiently suck on their own when they needed to because of tongue tie, because of oral motor weakness, because of tone issues, because of genetics, there's some other, genetic conditions that can do that, they will prefer to feed while sleeping because that goes back to reflexive. They never actually learned how to do it volitionally. So again, babies to want to sleep to fall asleep while feeding, but if they will only ever be asleep to feed, that usually tells you something happened where they never actually learned to suck and swallow.
So here's a question for you that I get a lot in terms of feeding to sleep, right? This whole idea of like, don't feed your baby to sleep. Like, let's start there, right? When it becomes a challenge for the parent to feed every single time they wake up, because that's the only way the baby will fall back asleep.
Yeah.
And it's like, when is it like we need to figure out whether it's like the beginning of the night and help the baby learn another way other than feeding to sleep,
Yeah.
right? Versus like totally, I'm on board of feeding to sleep if it's not a problem.
Right. You nailed it. When it's not a problem. So everybody's line and definition is different in when it becomes a problem. Lifestyle plays a role. I find parents that really struggle with night feedings are the ones where they're mom to work because
Yep.
she doesn't get rest during the rest of the day. It's like I have to grind all day and then all night, right? Get there. But I have a lot of moms that have a high tolerance for it because they're co-sleeping and they're not telling the pediatrician, but they're co-sleeping to be able to get that right. So it really comes down to there's no black and white, la 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 la, la, right? So we are designed to help breastfeed back to sleep. When it becomes an issue is unique and individual to that family. So it's a balancing of act of knowing that it's normal, but I tend to see it as the biggest problem when no one else in the family can put the baby to sleep. So sometimes it's even like maybe we need to get dad to figure out, or grandma or aunt or nanny to help with us with other strategies for going to sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on the age of the baby and all of the other situations related to it, because I'm a big proponent of sleep hygiene where we're setting up and structure, and there's ways that we can let the baby fall asleep at the breast but unlatch them, hold them there, transition to sleep, and then figure out other methods of then getting them back down.
Yep.
Don't create this like association of I have to breastfeed to go back.
Right. That's exactly what I teach in my programs in terms of how to reduce that, association or something. If it's, it's not just about not feeding them to sleep and putting them down. It's not like you make that big jump from being in your arms to putting them down in the bassinet or the crib or the bed.
Well, it's a factor, right? Because I get a lot of the consultations after one. I have a toddler and they will only nurse to sleep. That is a different station than a 3-month-old. A 3-month-old should be nursing to sleep. That's biologically developmentally appropriate. A 13-month-old,
I have no idea what just happened there. All of a sudden, randomly, I got cut off. Let's see if it'll let me join.
Sorry, everybody. That was random. Let me see if. I wonder if Susie got cut off. That's funny. Anyway, Susie got cut off. So we were basically talking about sleep and sleep strategies if it's okay for baby to. It says she's on. Hello. Let's see who she is. I'm trying to.
There we go. We're back.
I have no
I
idea.
don't know what happened. I have no idea.
Technology.
I was like, you're frozen. I can't hear you. And we're gone.
All of a sudden.
Okay.
I was chatting about how a toddler conversation is very different. A lot of maternal anxiety. There's a work component where the toddler misses mom and mom's working. They may have gotten nap trapped into not understanding how to respond to the baby other than with the breast, or not understanding then how to make those transitions away from feeding. They have no other strategy. Finding other strategies of, a lot of times I find it too, it's in families that have no routine, where there's like that bedtime is just, it's a free for all, every night's different, and there's no structure.
Yeah.
So do we have another question?
Not, we have some sleep questions, actually. There are a few sleep questions. One's not even a question, but it says co-sleeping with newborn in cot next to you for the first 4 months. Yes. And in a cot wouldn't be co-sleeping, it would be room sharing. Co-sleeping is more like bed sharing versus room sharing. But absolutely have your newborn in your room for at least the first 4 months.
Yeah, so I'm a really big long video on sleep because this is, other than milk supply, sleep is the number one question that we get, right? So let's talk about American Academy of Pediatrics back in the 80s, 90s found through research that on the back, our own sleep in the room with parents, the safest way to prevent sudden infant death, cot death, right?
Yep.
Whole movement, back to sleep, back to sleep, back to sleep. And that's accounting for formula feeding lifestyle. The Academy of Breastfeeding says that when you do the Safe Sleep 7, that it is safe to co-sleep with your baby in bed with you. The Safe Sleep 7 is a firm, flat mattress, not a couch or chair or waterbed, with no pillows and blankets around. Your baby is unswaddled, where they are not overheat, where they're only mom and maybe the partner, but no random family members, no pets in bed, where baby is exclusively breast milk fed, where there is no alcohol, smoking, or medication, that it is, and it's a full-term healthy newborn with no respiratory compromise, that is considered safe to bed share, where mom is basically in a fetal C next to the baby and the baby is on its back next to her.
Mm-hmm.
That it's safe, that you've mitigated your risk of sudden infant death. But if you have any one of those factors, you are slowly increasing your risk of SIDS. The highest being overheating, where there's formula feeding and smoking, drinking, and alcohol, because of how it changes baby's blood sugar and levels and all, right? So
Yeah.
when I let support group, 95% of my moms that were every week bed sharing.
Mm-hmm.
They were not telling their people. We're also following Sleep 7. There was no alcohol, there was no medications, they weren't vaping or smoking. They were exclusively breast milk feeding, even if it was pumped breast milk. They were in mattresses. Because did you know it is not safe to get up and breastfeed air overnight? That increases your risk of SIDS. But if you fall asleep in bed while breastfeeding, that's considered safer. So the risk benefit assessment, and you again have to know your lifestyle risk factors that you have. So if you have any of the unsafe 7, then yes, you should have that baby in a cot, a bassinet, crib, in the room with you, next to you. But if you meet the Safe Sleep 7, you have to know your situation to know if you've mitigated your risk. I lost your volume again. I lost your.
Here we go. I'm back. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious to hear your response to this question. When to start sleep training from your perspective? And then the follow-up question here was, what is an example schedule, ideal habits to follow?
Yeah. So typically, now again, this is in the context of a bigger mental health issue, right? I do not professionally promote sleep training under 4 months. We're trying to establish milk supply. We're trying to get babies are reflexive and instinctual. So usually I'm recommending her until 4 months, which is out of the 4th trimester. That's also usually when most people are going to work, right, and need additional sleep. If at all possible, I'm not until 6 months when you can start solid, because we're on an exclusive breast milk diet. For some people, sleep can sabotage milk supply. Not for all, not for most, but for some to many, it will sabotage their milk supply. So if breast milk feeding is the goal, the bigger discussion, are you healthy, baby? Are you able to responsibly to feed on demand when you are with the, or are you back working on it, right? Bigger And what is the breast storage capacity of that parent? If mom needs to be moving milk around the clock to make supply, and her baby's sleeping, that would mean she'd still have to get up and pump. So she's not saving herself any time, still doing setup and cleanup and storage of that milk. If she has a large storage capacity where she can sleep through with the baby, that's a different conversation, right? So there is an individuality of, oh, look, you made it to 6 months, you're back to work, but you have a great pump and you have a high milk storage capacity. Awesome. Let's work on sleep routines. And if you have a mom that it's like 3 months and breastfeeding is a struggle and there's a tie that we have decided not to clip and she's got a small storage capacity and she's struggled with low milk supply, and if she wants to get up and pump, awesome. But right, we have to figure out all of those dynamics to know whether what age is really going to work. And if it's impacting mental health, yes, right. A big of if you are not pouring out of a full cup, right,
you've got nothing,
right,
you're hurting.
Conversation of what goal is more. Is breast milk more important? Is latch more important? Is mental health a key factor? And figuring out what's then going to work individually for that family without taking shit from anybody about your personal choices.
Yeah. I mean, someone who suffered postpartum anxiety more than even depression, I think, was, and trying to keep up my milk supply and trying to get my babies to sleep, like doing it all, right? It's just, I think my mental health suffered in trying to do it all. And I wish I knew now what I knew. But I wish I knew then what I know now. So yeah, it's hard. For sure. That's all the things that we need to take into consideration. And then this is an interesting one. Again, we don't know age, just kind of a general range. How can I encourage my toddler to stay in her bed at night?
Everybody's going to find a different strategy that works, right? Like babies and toddlers don't understand concepts of time. They don't understand day and night. They don't understand 5 minutes to an hour. So moms at the playground will say 5 more minutes, but that 5 more minutes could be an hour, right? It's ambiguous. So what we found was helpful was using visual and auditory cues to help teach our toddlers what time meant. So for us, we used a Hatch baby light that has the sound, and it would turn purple at 6 o'clock. And that meant, hey, it's time to get ready for bed. And we could go in at 6 and it could take us as long as we do, but at 7, the light would change to a blue and it would go to ocean waves. And that was our cue of it is now time to sleep. And it would stay blue with ocean. Now we live in LA, so we needed the white noise to cancel out helicopters and sirens, right? So for us, we had that for a functional purpose. But then at 5:30 or 6 a.m., we kind of figured out what the routine was because we have early sleepers. We would have it change to yellow with birds. And that meant it is morning. If I am awake, I can get up and go get up mommy. And we just did it over and over and over and over. And the beautiful thing about the Hatch light is you can control it from your phone. So if I happened to wake up before my toddler and they were still asleep, I would just keep it at the blue and the ocean until they woke up, and then I'd change it really quick. So yeah, okay.
I literally just had an hour consult with a mom who's expecting twins. She has a toddler who's like coming out, decided to climb over the crib. And we talked about the Hatch, this exact scenario, and then how to structure it to like get him to be successful, right? And to celebrate those moments. So yeah, and what I like about this question too is like encourage my toddler, and it's not make my toddler stay in bed, because we can't make them sleep. We can't make them do anything, but we can help them in lots of different ways.
Teaching them too, like the game changer for mine was when she was getting up at like 4 a.m. at 2:30, 3, and we watched The Floor is Lava, and we told her the floor is lava. If you need to call for us. Yeah, she thought the floor was lava for like 6 months. So it was great. So sometimes My 4-year-old was getting up once a night in the middle of the night and for months, and then the elf on the shelf came, and we told her, if you get out of bed, the elf's magic will leave. Oh, but now she sleeps in her bed, damn it. She's not going to door. So I love my elf on the shelf because she's keeping my 4-year-old in bed. So sometimes
you use what you got. Yeah. Oh my God.
For their choices if they are healthy choices.
Yeah, I remember mine shared a room when they both moved to a bed, and he had like an early sleep onset. Like he needed to be in bed by 6, where like she's my, I can sleep in and stay up late. She's my flexible sleeper. But like I had to literally sit in the room for like 10 minutes till he fell asleep so she wouldn't wake him up. Then I could leave, and she would just like do her own thing and eventually get in bed and fall asleep when she wanted to. But it was like a challenge of like navigating completely different schedules, but being in the same room.
Yep.
Yeah. And staying in bed and not getting mad at each other.
Or both girls, and they share a queen size bed. And my little will often sleep within like 5 minutes of laying down, and my big wants to like hang out for a little while. And so it's been like navigating that same thing of how to do that without.
I know. It's so crazy. Oh my God, this has been such a fun conversation. I'm wondering if there were any, I think there were some questions that popped up, and we want to get those, or how are we on time here, Julie?
Got about 2 minutes because I have 1 p.m. But there was some on 9-month-old Pede wants to sleep train but worried about supply because I'm just an upper. Why does the Pede want you to sleep train? Do you want to sleep train? If you want to sleep train, but if it's because a pediatrician who doesn't live with you, not, no, like, right? Like if you're happy with what you're doing, keep on doing what you're doing. My just enoughers, again, if you're not pumping, if you're just breastfeeding, yes, sometimes it can sabotage milk supply. So that again is the conversation of, if you're happy, be happy in it, and don't let someone tell you who doesn't live with you what to do in that case, right? Exclusively breastfed, how to encourage bigger daytime feeds to maximize calories and reduce nighttime feeds. 3-month-old, not most, usually doesn't happen. We can't force babies to take more than they want to take. That's like my husband being like, you need to finish all 32 ounces of these a day, right? So at this age, watch the clock. Research says when they're developmentally ready, they'll start taking more feedings during the day and sleep longer at night. Months is still really young. And snacks, it's tricky, right? Because every human eats different. I'm a snacker, and I get plenty of calories on, 250 calories every hour. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we have intermittent fasters, and we have people that do bigger meals. We should be teaching our babies intuitive eating, meaning they eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're full, because that feeding skill carries over into adulthood, where we then no longer see impulsive binging, the feeding because of feeling, all of that. You're laying a foundation of feeding, and we as humans should be intuitively eating, regardless of dietary choices. Vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, want to eat. We should be intuitively eating to what makes our body feel good.
Absolutely. 100% agree. And even my kids today who are, 12, he'll be 12 and she's 10, like they're like, I'm sorry I didn't finish. I'm like, you don't have to finish. Like, if you're not hungry, that's okay. He's like, but it's wasting. I'm like, it's not wasting. Like, don't worry about it. You're good.
I was a clean plate club family where we're big, and it has caused me plate club binge an adult that I've had to work 30 break, right?
Yeah.
What are normal baby who's 17 days old? They're period. So how you age is how quickly people change their stage and their habits and patterns. Counting day is a new day. There is no habit movement. It's purely reflexive. Once you start counting weeks, you'll have a new pattern, habit, and a new development. And it really, every week, you have a bigger. Once you start counting months, that will fall into a routine, and it tends to be more with fairly decent nap, and then feedings get more frequent after on. You'll have your biggest feed front end of the night, longest stretch, so they'll climb afternoon and evening, and the longest sleep 6:37, 7:30 till midnight, and then the sleep gets shorter, night goes on, so they'll do a long stretch and then shorter and shorter, and that's usually until about the 4-month sleep, and when everything flip flops, and then they can start doing, you know, shorter on the front, longer on the front.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you so much for popping on and for dealing with the glitches.